Welcome back, guys. So in this video, we'll talk about kind of a new type of prompting that is called as chain of thought. So earlier, the old models, if you see like GPT-4 or any other old models, GPT 3.5, they were struggling in the complex tasks. But now in the latest models like GPT-5, Claude, 4.5, so on, they are good at reasoning. Okay, so this chain of thought prompting is kind of a, kind of a prompting where, you are making the LLM to follow specific steps or, specific process, specific reasoning. Okay, as the name says, like it is chain of thought, right? Like where you say chain, like series, sequential thought. It's like thinking process, reasoning. Okay. So here you're making the LLM, forcing the LLM, encouraging the LLM to follow specific steps. Step one, step two, like that. Imagine you're having a existing framework, or if you're having specific things and you want LLM to follow that particular steps, that is where this chain of thought will come. So LLM will think in that particular perspective and follow that particular steps. That is what chain of thought is. This will be helping when you're working with complex tasks. Whenever you're working with complex tasks and you want the LLM to follow specific steps doing this task, saying that, okay, step one, do this, step two, do this, step three, do this, and finally conclude, something like that. So that if you want LLM to do that, that is where this chain of thought. So you can just present in your prompt, like, what are the steps the LLM should follow, and basically, the LLM will follow. So in my personal work also, I use this a lot because whenever there is a complex task, LLM will follow its own rules, own steps. Because if you don't guide LLM, it will follow its own rules, and that might not work for you. That might, not feasible to you in your process. So in that case, you can just guide LLM to follow these particular steps, and it will follow that particular steps. That is the idea. That is one reason why we use chain of thought. And second reason is, imagine you're working on some tedious task, and that task LLM is not able to directly solve it. Okay. Again, there also LLM, there you can use this chain of thought, COT, to guide LLM saying that, okay, if you follow this, if you follow this, if you follow this step by step, you will finally reach the goal, something like that. Okay. So you're guiding LLM. So either you want to follow specific framework or you want to guide LLM on something. That is where this COT, chain of thought, will be helping. Okay. So let me show a small example of, how this chain of thought works. Okay, why chain of thought was introduced. Let me show a small research paper. Okay, you can just search for chain of thought, paper in Google, and you'll be able to get what example, why they have introduced chain of thought. Okay, so if you see this paper, you can see this example here. This is again the examples of the old models. You might not see this. I mean, in these examples might not work for the current models, which you guys are using. But yes, here you'll understand why we actually go for chain of thought. Okay, so look at the standard prompting. Okay, generally, imagine this a question saying that, okay, Roger has 5 tennis balls. He buys two more cans and so, two more cans of tennis balls. Uh, each can has 3 tennis balls. How many tennis balls does he have right now? So in the old models, we're answering like 11. So ideally, sorry, for this, the answer is 11. But again, this is again example is few shot. If you ask the same question, it is giving 27, which is a wrong answer. Again, right, right. But here, instead of directly saying that in the answer, instead of using this answer 11, so it's like a mixture of few shot plus reasoning. Okay, you will just give some examples with reasoning. So you will just give an example and saying, okay, this is the reasoning you have to do. Like, Roger started with 5 balls, he came something like that. You're giving step-by-step procedure to solve this. And now, similar way, the AI will learn accordingly and do that. Okay, so you're just telling LLM, okay, for this problem, you have to follow these particular steps to reach your answer, something like that. Okay, that is a main goal of, chain of thought prompting. Okay, so let me show a few more examples of chain of thought in our code as well. So you can see here, imagine you are working, you want LLM to give you a framework or give you opinion on a situation. Okay, so you are first giving a persona. Okay, the first thing which you talked about role, you're saying that you're a business consultant. Always break down complex decision into clear steps. So you're saying analyze the situation using the following framework. So you have this framework ready and you want LLM to follow this framework for sure. Then you're just giving the framework, such as saying that identifying the key factors, list pro and cons for each option, consider short-term versus long-term implications, assess risk, and provide your recommendation. So basically, you're asking LLM to provide provide or give some, insights on a situation. And this is a situation you are giving dynamically. You can see it says, I run a small software company with 10 employees. We have been offered two opportunities. One is option a large enterprise client want to buy us to build a custom solution for 200K. And option B is keeping focusing on SaaS product that currently has 500 paying customers at a $50 per month each. We are growing at 10% over. What should I do? Which option? You want LLM to guide you. Okay. So you want again LLM to follow this framework. For example, imagine in this case, if you don't give the framework, okay, I'll just remove the steps. Okay. Just I will say analyze the situation and it will just go on with situation. Okay. For example, if I use this case, you can see here I've removed the framework and I just said, okay, you analyze the situation right now. Okay. And if I run this, then LLM follows its own framework. With LLMs, according to its standard knowledge, it will do that. So it will do some kind of step-by-step information, like it says, evaluate financial implications, consider long-term stability, assess resource availability. It doesn't include any much of pros and cons information for me, right? Or it doesn't follow my framework. So this is where the problem is. So now imagine I don't want this kind of response. I want LLM to follow my own framework, like own step-by-step procedure. Okay, step-by-step procedure that it has to follow this exact steps to get me the result. So now if you do this, you can see now in if you start giving this, you can see exactly your LLM followed the same steps you recommended. It says first identify the key factors. You can see then giving the pros and cons for each option, short-term and long-term implications, risks for each option, recommendation, right? Which option do you prefer? It's preferring option B to continue to develop and grow, don't sell. So something like that, right? So this is the idea of the chain of thought prompting, where you have whenever you are making complex decisions or complex problems, you can make LLM to follow these particular steps. You can force LLM to follow these particular steps, and it will work for you that way. Okay, that is one thing. One more example you can see. Imagine you want LLM to analyze your code step by step. Again, same thing. I'm just giving some code, and but I'm asking it to, follow this exact procedure when analyzing the code. Just don't follow like, for example, again, if you just try to remove, you can just try to remove and experiment this. Imagine if I just try to remove this framework, it will just give whatever it as knowledge of it will. You can see it is giving a lot of steps and it is not following my framework, but in my case I want to follow this exact steps. Like first, identify what happens when code runs. Second, explain why it crashes. Third, describe the edge cases. Fourth, provide. So I want exact this one, so I'm just providing this proper steps, and that is basically called as chain of thought. Now you can see first it will tell, okay, what happens when code runs. Second, what happens when code crashes, edge cases, fixed version. So like this, you can see it is following your own steps and giving you the answer. That is what chain of thought. So you are making the LLM to follow your thought. I mean, follow your own process of thought. Okay. Or you guiding the LLM to follow this thought. This is the kind of a reasoning kind of thought. Okay. So I hope you understood. You can also try some examples on chain of thought. You can try, some kind of financial details and ask step-by-step analysis or something like that. So yes, I hope you understood what is chain of thought and why do we need this, especially when you're working with complex situations, complex problems, whenever you want AI to do some kind of complex things. And when LLM is struggling, either when LLM is struggling or you want LLM to follow your own process, you can just give the steps. That is nothing but chain of thought. Okay. Thank you guys. Let's meet you in the let's meet in the next video, next technique. Okay. Thank you.